Now, the government has proposed new anti-strike laws to maintain a basic function and deliver minimum safety levels in the public sector during industrial action.
But unions say that this legislation will actually result in more strikes as a proposed law to limit their democratic right to strike.
Well, the country faces yet more industrial action today with another 48 hours of rail strikes. Nearly 40,000 RMT members are on the picket line until tomorrow night.
Well, our national reporter Paul Hawkins joins us now from Euston Station. Top of the morning, Paul. So what's the lowdown on this anti-strike legislation? We just heard from Pat McFadden of the Labour Party saying the first thing they will do when they got in is get rid of this stuff.
Yeah, and we heard that from Sir Keir Starmer in his speech yesterday, Martin, and Pat McFadden. And the general message from the Labour Party is that the government just needs to get around the negotiating table. And it doesn't need to pass new laws to minimise these strikes. And let's be clear about this. Grant Shapps, the business secretary, yesterday said that he wanted it put on record that he's not banning strikes. He simply wants to introduce minimum levels of service. And he actually went on to say that he really respects the right to strike and long may it continue, he said. So we're talking about minimum levels of service when it comes to rail, fire and ambulance services, and then some sort of voluntary agreement for other sectors, other public sectors like health and education, and the government would consult. It'll introduce primary laws to bring in those minimum levels of service. What those minimum levels are, because that's a very subjective term, they would consult on. But the unions, the general feeling amongst unions is one of anger. They're considering legal action, and Labour, as you say, would repeal those laws if they were introduced. But the reason why the government wants to introduce them, in the words of Grant Shapps, to restore the balance between those seeking to strike and protecting the public from disproportionate disruption. Now, we don't know what the exact comeback is from Mick Lynch, the boss of the RMT, who are bringing starting their latest strike today, a 48-hour one lasting Friday and into tomorrow, the same as at the start of this week. In fact, we've had rail strikes all the way through this week. But we do know that Mick Whelan, the General Secretary of ASLEF, who were on strike yesterday, they're the union that represents train drivers, has said that, frankly, this legislation wouldn't have much of an impact on strikes anyway. We'd organise strikes locally instead of nationally, and anyone who is on strike for more than 6 weeks can be sacked anyway under the current legislation. So he said that they wouldn't have much of an impact, and we may find out what Mick Lynch thinks about this new anti-strike legislation later today, if he does indeed turn up to the picket line that should assemble behind me throughout the morning.